Okay, this is a panel. It's a big panel. So let's get right to it. It's a discussion on one customer, many channels. Guys, I'm going to be calling your names. Just come on up and make yourself comfortable as I speak about you. We're going to hear about what our experts have to say about tackling the #1 customer complaint, which is inconsistent experiences across channels. Let's welcome Rami Zahran. Rami, coming up. Yes, sure. Go ahead. Give him a little applause. Bless you. Chief Marketing Officer of Saudi German Health, based in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. He has over 15 years of experience in marketing and communications and a proven track record in the industry. His leadership has been instrumental in the complete transformation of the healthcare group's brand visual identity and consolidating the brand under one larger healthcare group known as Saudi German Health, or SGH. We have Achilles Manolopoulos, who is the front runner for my favorite name today. Make some noise for Achilles. He's head of customer experience from Zand, the region's first digital bank. He's a highly experienced and innovative fintech, CX, and digital banking professional with a successful track record of launching disruptive businesses and startup fintech organizations. He has a significant experience in delivering successful outcomes within enterprise digital programs. And Achilles is also a slow triathlete, which I actually have never heard of. And I think if I was a triathlete, I would also be a slow one. We also have Ilaria Buonpane. Welcome, Ilaria. She is the Director of Customer Experience at Talabat. Yes, that's right. She leads the organization in its voice of the customer program and customer experience strategy. She has received prestigious international customer experience awards. Ilaria is a firm believer of positively energizing leadership and empathy, and her career has been guided by the principle that everyone owns a piece of CX in the company. And let's welcome Joe Akkawi. Coming up, Joe. Yes, come on. You're very popular. Joe's the Senior Manager, Global Strategic Accounts from Sprinklr. You might recognize him as the tech expert on the region's largest Arabic morning show, Sabah al-Khair Ya Arab. With a career spanning over 19 years, Joe has worked with some of the world's biggest brands, including Visa, Harley-Davidson, Sheraton, Nokia, Dubai Tourism, Emirates, and British American Tobacco. And last but not least, we have Bertan Budak. Come on up, Bertan. Digital Marketing Director from Property Finder. Bertan has over 14 years experience in digital marketing, working with brands such as Unilever, LVMH Group, and Nike on driving their digital roadmap across Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. And to moderate this power-packed panel, we have Yolande de Mello, editor from Martech Vibe. Please, a little applause for Yolande. Are you taking that one? Okay, that might not be on. I may have to turn that on for you. Yolande is a journalist with more than 10 years of experience covering emerging technology and business. She's tracked digital disruption and its impact on enterprises across the US and the Middle East. One more time for our entire panel. Give it up, please.
Perfect. So I think it's also really interesting, what I was saying is everyone's thinking about it. Everyone's thinking about their omni-channel, multi-channel game right now. But I think it's also a very well-curated panel because we've got so many industries and each of you has a brand that has a very unique relationship with their consumers. So I want to start off to contextualize this panel with engaging customers via their preferred channel of communication. Why is this so important? And if we can start all the way over there, please.
No, I think there's a multitude of reasons why it's very important. So a lot of companies in particular have multiple touch points when it comes to the first point of interaction with the customer. At Property Finder, we have our website. We also have our application, and we know that people interact differently with the different types of platforms. So it's very much important that we understand how users interact with our platforms and what we can do to surface the right platform to the user at the same time.
Okay. So it's the same question, but from the health perspective.
I think health or in general, one of the most important, for me, aspects of why you need to meet the customer where they are is because of competition. If you don't do it, your competition is going to do it. And there's so much, there's an abundance of competition today in terms of any sector. Look at healthcare, hospitals, for example. Hospitals which are typically not in abundance. If you look at it just in Dubai, you have so many different options and so many different doctors and so many different specialties that if you want to market your services better than somebody else, because that, there's so many different choices, you're going to have to be the one to reach out to the sort of the customers, in our case, patients, or guests, actually. We refer to our patients as guests because we're trying to change the concept of hospitals to hospitality. And so you need to meet them where they are. Otherwise, somebody else will. So it's if you don't do it, your competition will.
Now, I think it's interesting because we've got two digital-first channels, right? So, Achilles, if you want to go next.
Yeah. So, can I test? Everybody can hear me? Okay. So, I think for us, it's about designing an end-to-end journey, regardless if you're targeting acquisition or servicing. You should not, I think we'll talk later about organizational structure and siloed approach to customer experience, but from the beginning, you have to have the customer-first approach and always drive an end-to-end journeys. And that's where you're gonna be able to identify the edge cases and resolve for these scenarios. So it's a proactive approach to engaging with customers. Hopefully, eventually, we'll get to a point that we can be predictive, but I don't think we're quite there yet of the way we mine the data. But we should be aiming, as I said, for the end-to-end customer experience, not just acquisition and then letting the customer go, and then once they interact with us, all of a sudden, oh, we need to service them now. So we need to design end-to-end journeys.
Okay. Ilaria, you're up.
So to build on what my colleagues have said and what Achilles was saying, one of our guiding principles at Talabat is experience first. So we really try to look at this end-to-end journey. And to your answer, I think that the reason to contact and the reason to interact really determines the right communication channel that we should be using. And what we're trying to do is also to automate some of the reasons so that we get in touch with the customers before the problems occur, right? So we kind of trying to prevent those problems. But stepping, back from the digital-first world and from my previous experiences in retail and luxury, we used to talk a lot about omni-channel and whether, we should be present in the physical world, in the digital world, Instagram, now metaverse, and so on. And one thing that I read an article that got stuck in my head, and it says that we live in a mono-channel era. So from a customer perspective, they don't really care about, whether we have a chat, we have a phone, we have WhatsApp, whatever. They have a brand in front of them. So we have to put ourselves in the shoes of our customers and really try to be relevant and to stay relevant where customers are.
I think that makes sense, building that journey for one, though there are many ones in this particular equation. Joe?
I would attribute the necessity to the maturity of the modern customer. What we look at today, if you look at any new channel that enters the space, brands don't enter the channel before the customers. If anything, we follow where the trend happens. You look at the latest movement, we see, wow, there's been growth in that department, and it's almost necessary for us to be, and for all our customers to be available on these channels, because by the time we arrive, there's a certain maturity that the customers have with the usage and the expectation using a certain touch point, digital touch point in particular, that there is a catch-up in place. And brands that succeed on catching up with the maturity of those customers who use those channels tend to be the ones who innovate and eventually become the ones who look at as the golden standard, in whether it's service or a complete transactional journey on any of those channels. So I think it's very important from that perspective, because we are catching up and the brands are catching up to where the conversation is happening. And I'll take it back again to the necessity of us being there, because based on every single person's experience in the room, we are accustomed to a certain touch point online. And if we don't receive a specific type of service or able to transact correctly within that space, it leaves a very sour taste in the mouth of the end customer. And I'm sure from a complete journey online, you can actually track where the customer falls off because you know where things went wrong in that complete journey for you. So I would definitely invite everyone to understand that, yes, while it is important, but sometimes it's necessary for you to be available where the customer is.
I think that's a fair point because it's not like you're letting go of certain channels, right? Like email is something we'll never let go of. It does so well, and we've all seen that. But then when you have to move to newer channels, you're also trying to create those consistent experiences across without sort of failing in the ones that you were already doing right. So this leads me to my next question, which right now is for Rami and Joe, but feel free to just sort of jump in. I want you to also comment on what each other are saying because I think that's the best way to learn. So in terms of channels, what's a must-have and what's a nice-to-have? Or is that definition itself meaningless?
I'll let Rami go first.
So, yeah, it is a bit meaningless in terms of you must be, in my opinion, anywhere in the channels that are going to get you the maximum ROI. That's as simple as that. If I know that specific channels are the ones that are going to maximize my return, whether it's through social media platforms or specific even offline channels, you need to consider them all. And in your annual strategy that you're going to do to prepare for sort of the upcoming year, that analysis of which ones are going to maximize my ROI should dictate what channels are a must-have. So if it's going to have ROI, absolutely, it's a must-have. If you're doing it because everybody else is doing it, and it's a trend because we heard that everybody's on X social media platform or X channel, but it just doesn't make sense for your industry, it's definitely not one of those must-haves. But it is worth sometimes trying. It is worth trying some channels because sometimes in healthcare, I remember I've almost been 10 years. I have 10 years in healthcare now. When we first started, nobody was doing social media in healthcare, and I'd proposed it. So at the time, I was a digital marketing manager. And I'd proposed it to our management, and they're like, what are you talking about, social media for healthcare? Why would anybody be interested to be sort of, to be actively engaged with a healthcare provider? And little did we know, or little did we expect, that people were just hungry for healthcare content online and social media, and the engagement was tremendous. Lead generation in healthcare is incredible, and we're talking about hospitals. Lead generation, particularly if you run, and you'll be surprised, you can run some offers on certain cosmetic procedures, for example. We get a tremendous amount of leads. In Saudi Arabia, we get a huge amount of leads for weight loss. Weight loss is huge in Saudi Arabia. So we'll then break it down into which channels are getting us the most leads, where are we getting most ROI. There's some channels that get no ROI.
And I'm sure that was an experiment for you as well, like going in, maybe that surprised you as well, right? Like that certain, say, verticals within the hospital industry were reacting very well to those channels. So
absolutely. So that's what I'm saying.
It wasn't a must-have, but it
that's what I'm saying.
developed into that.
In your analysis, when you come to see what gives you the most return,
right,
all the ones that you know are giving you a return become your must-haves.
Of course.
The ones that you want to try out are sort of your nice to try out, and if they give you some returns, then definitely in your next annual budgeting cycle, you start pushing more budget towards them.
Interesting. So what do you think?
I mean, I don't have much to add on this because Rami covered it perfectly. The only thing I would probably just touch upon is that sometimes we are driven by a change in trend. So if we look at a market like Saudi Arabia in particular, 3-4 years ago, the main channel of communication was Twitter, especially in Arabic, and the focus on customer experience and customer care sat on Twitter. Over time, WhatsApp used to be a nice to have. We look at numbers today, WhatsApp to an extent dominates 60-70% of the conversation in customer care. So that channel transitions from a nice to have to a must have.
And you can stay in front of the competition that way also, right? By being there in the nice to have. Right?
Absolutely,
yeah.
Yes. And to an extent, from a provider point of view as well, if all the channels have the capability for us to integrate them as part of a wider journey when you're discussing maybe complex situations like deflection, where customers can be bounced around between different channels, that technology can sometimes drive that definition. But definitely I feel ROI sits at the bottom of the conversation because content is still not very cheap to produce. Media is still not very cheap in terms of getting a good budget to get correct returns. So if you see results from a specific channel, it by default becomes a must-have. And the others can be a battleground to test things differently and to grow and diversify your offer.
So the first thing that comes to mind is about diluting your, say, efforts, right? But there's so many things that can go wrong. So can we talk a little bit about there's so many things that can go wrong? And Ilaria, if we could start with you.
I think that, you know, the real challenge is aligning processes, people, and data so that we don't go wrong. And my answer, I will double click on the people side, because I think that if we align on people, processes and data will follow somehow eventually. So when it comes to people, we spoke about, I heard about, you know, the fact that the CMO and the CIO should become best friends, right? But when it comes to the customer experience team, they should become friends with literally every team and every function in the organization and the company, which is nearly impossible. But somehow it has to happen, right? So one of the things that I'm pretty proud of that we've been doing at Talabat is to create a forum, which is called Customer Experience Committee, which happens every week. And it's attended by our senior leaders. So our chief operations, CEO, chief data, chief product, et cetera, So what we do, what does this committee do is that because everyone owns a piece of customer experience, what we try to do is that every week we look at the voice of the customer data and we digest all this information. We connect the dots between marketing data, ops data, data of the app, et cetera, to pinpoint what are the top 3 CX pressing issues to solve, and then we cascade this information to the forum, and collectively we put together the action plan. And this is driving a lot of results because we're shortening the feedback loop. So literally, you know, in 1 week, we know every week what the biggest problems to solve are, and we mobilize the company to row in the same direction altogether.
That's actually pretty brilliant. I mean, I think a lot of conversations happen over coffee, but this is sort of like a really organized coffee session where everyone's suddenly thinking about the customer. So yeah, perfect.
By the way, it's not just the CIO that should be a CMO's best friend, the CFO. But he doesn't want, the CFO, he or she does not want to be the CMO's best friend, I'll tell you that much.
Everyone wants to be the CFO's best friend. So Achilles Zand is all about, the conversation has been all about customer experience, right? So do you want to jump in here with the impact on customer experience, but also the challenges that you see?
Yeah, just to top up on the comments before about the channels. I think if you have the tools, you should be listening to the customers. And brands that are afraid to engage should not be engaging with the customers. There are definitely people out there already engaged in conversations, talking about different topics. And if you're truly going to deliver a customer-centric, data-driven, type of solution to the customers, then you need to be where the conversations are happening. If you have the ability to listen, then you'll be able to determine if it's worth engaging or not, and then proceeding with that. And then you need to, I think to the point raised, then you need to have the internal governance and processes in place, so there is no siloed approach. I think very similarly, we, even from the day we started building from scratch, we had a voice of the customer committee, just to understand every single journey end to end and make sure that the right approach is followed, both from a customer, people, process, and technology perspective. Start with the customer first, and then you understand the solution you need. But first you need to listen, right, and see what customers want.
Mm-hmm. I think, yeah, easier said than done. I want to bring you in here.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I just wanted to touch up on that point, because I think a lot of the times we're so data obsessed, but we never really ask the question, what is actually data? Is it just a bunch of numbers, or is knowing how users behave, that's data. Your year's experience, that's also data. And one of the things that we found at Property Finder, because we're a fully virtual business, We do not have the benefits of a retail business to have a physical structure where users can visit us and actually feel the products and actually see the business firsthand. And one of the things that we did recently was launch a completely offline brand campaign with exceptional results. And yes, we didn't get the level of data in terms of numbers that we were used to as a fully digital business, but the feedback that we received both from our clients and also from our users as well has been exceptional. So I think don't be afraid to challenge the status quo. Data comes in lots of different shapes and forms, and never let that limit your business. I think those are key.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Sort of like a backward path to it, but interesting. So I want to talk about customer service within this scope of the conversation we're having, and how you see automation and agents, real people. What are their roles? Are they changing? And how can they work together? So I'm going to actually open this up. So Achilles, would you like to go first?
Yeah, so from a customer service perspective, I think we're going back to customer experience rather than customer service. So the people involved in the, let's call it in the front line, they're expected to know the customer. They are expected to know where the customer is at that point of the journey and provide the right answers, right? I think what we should be aiming to achieve is first interaction or first contact resolution, because with the amount of data that organizations have, they should know their customers. And that's what the customers are expecting. And that solution should be provided at the first point of contact in that same channel that the conversation and the interaction has been initiated. If it's something that cannot be resolved through that channel, then the conversation needs to be taken to the next available and fastest channel to provide that resolution. I think it depends what you measure and what your KPIs are, but we should be trying to avoid to measure, for example, for contact centers, average handling time and focus on first contact resolution. I think you've seen a lot of horrific stories in social media about the amount of time people need to be kept on hold. So why do you need to do that as a customer-facing agent? You have the information. So it's either knowledge, lack of knowledge, or lack of having the right KPIs.
Integration, perhaps, could be one of the reasons.
But that's down to designing the processes, right? Mm-hmm. So the data should be there for the people that they have that kind of responsibility. So we have designed both the customer-facing and the employee-facing applications in a way that both parties have the same kind of data. So when the interaction and the conversation happens, there is no surprise. So right now we're aiming for proactive engagement. So every time we know exactly what the conversation hopefully is going to be about. And the more data we gather, eventually we're going to be into predictive.
Okay, that's really interesting. There's a no tolerance sort of approach towards this. So what does my panel think? Do you agree? Is there anything that you think that, could be different? Yeah.
So I want to say something about CX and technology enabling CX. That is also, you have to have no tolerance with. So purchasing CX tools without the right people to agents, for example, to support it, or the right specialists. Let's say you purchase a really solid CRM tool, but you don't have the right people who understand it and know how to utilize it, CRM specialists, you're wasting your money. Mm-hmm. Don't do it for the sake of having a very fancy CRM. At the same time, if you're doing it to improve your CX, but your culture doesn't support, so you were talking about people, Ilaria, if your culture doesn't support a CX culture, what's the point of buying that tool? If for example, you've set a marketing automation campaign, and then that campaign leads to, let's say, a callback from your call center agent who's terrible, has terrible manners, terrible selling skills. Again, wasted money from running that campaign, wasted money from acquiring the CX tool. So you have to have a really good culture in place. We've actually, so before, what drove us to, we've recently acquired a CRM, what drove us to do it was our change of culture. So we've recently, so a couple of years ago, we've rebranded, 1 year ago, we rebranded to a whole new different concept from Saudi German Hospitals, Saudi German Health. And one of the things we did was come up with a brand ethos of caring like family. And that exists now across the board. Everyone has to show care for patients, staff, partners, as if they're a family member. So we had to change the culture first before we could acquire any set of technology that would help us create these sort of CX interactions digitally, so that when it goes offline to the agent, they would know how to interact with the patient guest in the best possible way.
That's actually really interesting. So, Joe, if you could...
I think you want...
I'm so sorry.
I was just going to add, so we're in a very unique position with Property Finder where people actually experience our platform through our agents, or our service through our agents. So we have the challenge of being of not having a direct interaction with the customer on many instances. So we had to find a way to really ensure that we gave our customers the best service, and that was for our agents. And one of the things that we actually did was we built a custom algorithm called Super Agent. And what that's allowed us to do is essentially find the best agents on the market by using a set of criteria, such as how quickly they respond to our customers, how long it takes for them to verify their listings, the number of verified listings that they have, and that's enabled us to surface the best of the best to the customer. And what that means is that even though we can't fully control the CX experience, we can always surface the best service levels to our customers, and
so
that's just the key.
So this happens internally?
So that happens internally, and one of the things that the customer has the option to do as they're looking through property listings is to filter all listings by super agents.
Right.
And again, it's putting the power back in our hands, and also not forces, but encourages our agents to offer the best service. And we share that data with the agencies themselves. So the big estate agents actually get given the data from their agency in terms of which of their agents perform best, and how they can obviously increase their service levels.
Interesting. So I want to understand a little bit about, like, when we say, you know, conversations should flow from one channel to the other, while keeping, without losing information, tone, context, and keep the narrative sort of central. What all is happening back end? Like, I mean, that seems like a lot. If you could decode that a bit for us.
Honestly, there's never been a better time to enter this space. The technology we have and we see around us is very capable of delivering what all my colleagues have just spoken of. Now, the main issue that CX really has to transform from everything we listen to from a lot of people who sit in this space is the fragmentation of conversations from a single customer. So if I'm today reaching out to a telco provider through the phone, and then I call, and then I reach out to them on Twitter, and then I get in touch with them on Facebook, if over those 3 repeated conversations you don't have personalization, understanding of historically what my problems were, and you keep talking to me like, who are you, let's get to know you, 3, 4 conversations in, that is a problem that this industry has to solve, and the technology is there to solve it. Because having a golden record for a customer that's available, so that the moment he reaches out to you, and this goes back to the excellent point regarding FCR, because first contact resolution depends on us owning who the customer is. And technology today allows you to authenticate these customers, irrespective of channels. It allows you to understand historically what their problems were. To an extent, if you build it right, you can even historically understand what they've purchased, what their interests are, where they go, what they do. So you can drive your conversation, your marketing, your conversion tactics, your growth of that customer. To nurture them and grow them into a very loyal customer by having this technology in the back end. And it might sound that I'm making it too easy by saying it's easy. Building automation is easy, but again, it goes back to Rami's point. Are we leading all this automation to a place where we have the right answers? Right. And without getting the right technology sitting behind the front line, the vanguard, who's talking to these customers, this entire exercise doesn't go anywhere. And again, if you're also investing time and effort into a closed system that cannot talk to other systems, that's immediately money wasted. The last thing you want today is to get involved in because a lot of tools seem attractive, seem interesting. You want to invest in them. They're going to do great for your business. Next thing you know, you have a data silo that you can't integrate with other information that's sitting across that you need to expand that horizon or journey for the customer of yours. So interconnectivity becomes almost second nature. We should be able to understand that the data we have has to be connected while protected as well, which is another layer of security, but we'll have to talk about it.
I think that just that phrase, for your business, you know, that is essentially going to be the deciding factor. Where does culture play in and where do you play to the culture that you currently have, right? So connecting all those dots. So I want now very quickly, and I want to start with Ilaria because it's been a very long time since you've spoken. I want one piece of advice that you would give to marketers sitting over here from your experience. And Ilaria, if we could start with you.
So 2 pieces of advice. One is, guys, let us pick the language of our stakeholders. So one of the things I failed in the past, I've heard other people failing as well. I've said things like, oh, we have to unlock the brand power, or oh, we have to, this is lacking storytelling. We have to connect emotionally with our customers. But sometimes our stakeholders would not understand the marketing language. So we have to make sure that we speak the language of our stakeholders. If the stakeholders is the CEO or the CFO, we should be speaking the language of the money. So what is the return? What is the impact on the bottom line? What is the impact on top line, etc.
Right.
And sometimes I feel like, the marketing teams are, lagging behind on that sort of conversation.
Because it's not a marketing initiative, right?
Yeah.
It's for the business. So
Exactly.
I think to speak that language makes sense. Absolutely.
Exactly. And the second piece of advice is that we said we have to listen to our customers. Absolutely true. We have to, and we do a lot, but we don't have to limit ourselves to listening the articulated customers' feedback. We have to tap into the non-articulated and unimagined customers' feedback, because this is where, the value will lie, because articulated feedback is what our competitors already somehow will eventually do. But unarticulated and unimagined is where the value lies.
Okay, interesting. Achilles, your advice?
Yeah, I think along the same lines, listening is definitely the most critical thing for me. But listen to the customer and listening to your colleagues, and I think trying to work together to make sure that we're doing the right thing for the customer. Customers do not care about our own internal processes or limitations. They just want the best possible experience. And this thing sometimes it does not have to be delivered with fancy technology. And it goes back to the point about culture and governance at the same time. And sometimes it's good to step back and view things as there is no legacy, there is no processes, and trying to make the right decision. And don't be afraid to go above and beyond the step to make sure that you provide the service that the customers deserve.
Okay, fair enough. Rami?
I'll go back to what I said earlier. Start with culture. If you want to implement a successful CX department, CX tool, CX anything, you have to have the right culture in place.
Bertan?
Don't underestimate the power of a good strategy. I think always try and be more strategic where you can, because every great campaign starts with a good strategy.
Absolutely, and that's what you bring in, in regards to every technology. And I want you to also give us one piece of advice.
I would ask everyone to be brave in uprooting legacy systems that they have emotional attachments to.
Emotional.
Yeah, I mean, there are, when you talk to businesses especially, there are certain, you can see there are some systems in place that on the long term, given the current trend of growth, are detrimental to the real growth of your business. And I mean, there's a lot that my colleagues have added on that, but really, don't be scared of moving it forward. I understand there's a huge risk in transformation, and there's always cost involved in transformation, but the long-term benefits outweigh the short-term struggle. You have to uproot legacy systems that are hampering this move forward.
Yeah, I think that's fair. There's a lot to decode, unfold in this panel, but I want to thank my panelists for being amazing and taking the time to do this and share this with us. Can we have a round of applause, everyone? I hope you enjoyed it.
Yes, yes, yes.